Kyle Busch this past weekend seemed a little bit uncertain about his future at Joe Gibbs Racing, and Bill Elliott is going to be returning to the SRX for a couple races this season. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories to discuss here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start with the paint schemes and sponsorship news first. Let's jump into those really quickly. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Lawson's 2022 Jeff Gordon throwback scheme, which is a throwback to Jeff Gordon when he ran this scheme in the 2007 Coca-Cola 600. We all know how that wreck unfortunately happened. This throwback is absolutely really good. I think did a really good job on it. Auto Park did a great job with the sponsorship, and I'm very excited to see that this sponsor is coming back to sponsor. Really awesome to see it. Looking forward to see on the racetrack in a Darlington throwback race. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Daniel Suarez and Ross Chastain, both theirs 2022 Worldwide Express schemes that we're going to see throughout the 2022 season. We're going to see it for multiple years as a multi-year agreement with Trackhouse Racing. It's really good for the sponsorship. Trackhouse has been picking up a ton of sponsors. This paint schemes are really awesome. Both of them look really good. They utilize sponsorship very well. The colors are really good. Kyle Sykes continues to knock it out of the park when it comes to sponsorships. I'm really excited to see this paint schemes, and I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack. The first time we'll see it is in Ross Chastain's one car, which we'll see for 17 races this year and next year. Looking forward to see on the racetrack here in 2022. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is David Starr's 2022 throwback scheme that we're going to see at the Darlington throwback race. It's very unclear what throwback this is, to be honest. They never really gave details. Darlington put it up on their website, and they really never gave details on exactly what the sponsorship is. But it does look like a really cool throwback. When they do officially announce the throwback, we'll probably know about it when we do go through throwbacks. But this throwback looks pretty awesome, and I'm looking forward to see on the racetrack here in the Darlington throwback race. And the final paint scheme as of now we are taking a look at is Roger Cruz's 2022 Circle Paint scheme that we're going to see this weekend in his second start at Dover. This paint scheme looks really cool in my opinion. Really cool to see the Circle Paint coming in and sponsoring Roger Cruz this weekend. It's awesome to see that Roger Cruz continues to pick up new sponsorships. He nearly won his first career ARCA race. By the way, he is the ARCA points leader, which is really good. But it's good to see that for sure, and I'm glad to see the Circle Paint is sponsoring Roger Cruz this weekend here at Dover International Speedway. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about traction compound. Bob Parker sent on Twitter yesterday afternoon about the Dover, and he says that there is going to be no traction compound this weekend at Dover. There have been very big concerns and possibilities that there was going to be traction compound at Dover, but because of the fact that they tested when they did the tire test, they did not use traction compound, so they're going to go ahead and not use traction compound this weekend at Dover. This is a thumbs up for me, because honestly, I think traction compound honestly should be gone by the wayside anyways. We really don't need it, considering we have a new car. I really think the traction compound should no longer be a thing. So I'm very happy to say traction compound is gone. Very excited about that, and glad to see that traction compound is no longer a thing, at least at Dover. Probably not going to see it most of the season. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Toni Breidinger. As Toni Breidinger revealed in an AMA this morning that she is no longer part of Busch's Beers Accelerate Her program. She also basically says that if someone's not committed to sponsoring on her fire suit, she's not going to basically support the company. Now, she was one of 7 or 8 females who were part of this Busch Beers Accelerate Her program. I think Amber Bell came as part of this, Jennifer Jo Cobb, Natalie Decker. All female drivers over the age of 21 were part of Busch Beers Accelerate Her program, and I'm kind of shocked that she's out of that program. There's not a lot of females in the sport, and you do want to basically have more of that representation. So it's definitely unfortunate the Busch Beers program did not go through and really is gone, but it is what it is for her. It sucks that she's not longer part of it, but honestly, it is what it is. Definitely unfortunate for her, though. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Geico 500, as this is reported by Joseph Strigley. He always does these Strigley facts. He reports that the final green flag run is the longest final green flag run since the 2004 Pepsi 400, which is 63 laps. This is also the first time since stage racing has happened where you basically went green flag from the start of stage 3 all the way to the end of stage 3, which is absolutely crazy considering historically how these races have gone to super speedways. You tend to have a lot of late race restarts here at super speedways, and it's kind of shocking to me that there was no cautions late in this race. A lot of those cautions happened in the middle portion of the race, but there's like 6 or 7 cautions. It's kind of typical for a Talladega race, but it's definitely a big surprise to me that there were not more cautions at this year's Geico 500 and no cautions late. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Skull Bandit. Now, Trackhouse, of course, picked up the victory this weekend, and basically Andy Peacher confirmed that the 33 Skull Bandit car is at the Trackhouse, is the same one that Harry Gant won 4 races in a row in 1991. And they're currently trying to get approval so they can drive that Skull Bandit before the green flag drops at Darlington for a couple laps. That is so cool that they have the Skull Bandit car, the legendary Skull Bandit car. Like I said, the Harry Gant went on to win 4 races, and that was such when Harry Gant was so good back in the late 80s and the early 90s. I really hope that they get the opportunity to run that Skull Bandit car because I think it'd be really cool if they got an opportunity to drive that. So really awesome to see that for sure, and hopefully we will, again, I hope we can see Skull Bandit car on track, so I think it'd be really, really awesome, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chase Briscoe. As Chase Briscoe on Saturday night for the Cup Series race happened the night before, he competed at some dirt track races. The first dirt track race he's planning to run out of 25 races this year. And he was able to go out there and win at the Talladega dirt track. Chase Briscoe is a really good dirt racer. He was on the verge of picking up his second victory of the 2022 season for unfortunately having that issue with Tyler Reddick, which we're going to get into that in just a little bit. But it's good to see a Chase Briscoe continues to go out there and race in different series. And one thing that I've been preaching for a while is I want to see more drivers compete in different series. It's good for local, and it's good to see that he's going out there and reaching out to the locals. Really glad to see that, and happy to see that Chase Briscoe was able to win at the Talladega dirt track. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Kyle Larson. Now, we've got a couple stories revolving around Kyle Larson, but the first we're going to talk about is around Volunteer Speedway. Kyle Larson was being asked about the Volunteer Speedway and them no longer having races, and he says that he was very surprised about the announcement this week that they cancel all races this year when he was speaking to the media about that. Now, Kyle Larson hosted his major Kyle Larson Dirt Challenge, a late model event that was very successful. Mike Marlar won that race, and he was very surprised considering that event did really well and was the most watched flow race. I think the most watched flow racing dirt event, I think maybe besides some of the others. But it's kind of shocking to me that Kyle Larson's event no longer is going to be a thing, it looks like, and they're not going to be hosting racing. But there's been rumors around Volunteer Speedway that there's been some ownership issues and are not paying around the drivers currently or something like that. I'm really not sure, but it definitely is a shock to me that basically they've had issues when it comes to that. And hopefully maybe they'll find some way to fix this issue, but honestly, I don't think that they're going to be able to fix these problems with that. That'll be a crazy story. But we'll wait and see what happens around Volunteer Speedway going forward. But man, it's kind of unfortunate what happened right there. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Talladega. Now, I believe it was Dustin Long or Nate Ryan who was basically approached by Brian Crishaw, who's the president of Talladega. And Brian Crishaw says that the crowd for the Cup race was up 10% in attendance for 2019 and the largest crowd for the spring race at Talladega since 2017. And of course, that was when Dale Jr. was in his final season. Absolutely great to see that Talladega continues to bring a ton of attendance. Now, the crowd was definitely not sold out, but you can definitely tell there's a lot of energy around the sport right now when it comes to attendance. We are seeing more people attend NASCAR Cup Series races. We're starting to see a lot more people show up to them, and we've had a lot of races where crowds have been higher. And I feel a lot of energy right now around the sport right now. I think there's a lot of good things going around, and there's a lot of good mojo around the sport right now. That it's great to see that Talladega continues to have huge attendance moves, and we'll see how the ratings are for this past weekend. But the fact that this race was the largest crowd for a Cup race in attendance, when it comes to attendance right there, I think is absolutely great. And very happy to see the Talladega Cup race was able to have higher attendance. Good to see the attendance up for this weekend. It wasn't sold out, don't get me wrong on that, but it's very cool to see the Talladega crowd was really, really high this weekend. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Matt Herschen. As Matt Herschen won, I believe, at Stafford Speedway, there was a big wheel and modified tour race that was happening there, where he won $24,000 against Ryan Preece. Because of that, Matt Herschen is going to be competing in the SRX race at Stafford Speedway. Now, Matt Herschen is a wheel and modified tour driver in NASCAR, but also is the son of veteran spotter Tony Herschen, who is a spotter for Kyle Busch. Matt Herschen has won a lot of races there, so he's definitely going to be a major contender. And one thing that the SRX has been doing really good this year is they've been inviting drivers who've been very successful in other forms of racing. They've had fan polls and stuff. And if you win these major events at these tracks, you're able to compete in these SRX races. And it's good for especially some of these guys because they're going to get a lot of recognition, especially with the SRX probably growing how many drivers they're going to have in each race. it's going to be good for the series. And again, very exciting that Matt Herschen is getting an opportunity. He absolutely deserves it. Congratulations to Matt Herschen on the opportunity of driving in the SRX. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Trackhouse Racing. Now, we do have a couple things to talk about in regards to Trackhouse Racing, but it was basically reported during the post media interviews, and I think Jonathan Vigil, someone else, basically brought this up later. He basically said they confirmed that they call their plans for a national-based race team no longer viable at this moment. They still do want a brick-and-mortar presence in Nashville, but they really can't because they have the Chip Ganassi shop now. It's not viable for them to build a shop in Nashville. This is not a shock to me because when he said that last year that they wanted to build a shop here in Nashville, well, not here because I'm not from the area, but in Nashville, he basically said that because their team did not have the Chip Ganassi team, but because now they have the Chip Ganassi team and how successful they have become, they basically really isn't viable at this point for them to go ahead and open up that shop. Don't get me wrong, I think they do still want to build a brick and mortar shop, and I think especially with Tootsie's being on Daniel Suarez's car and their presence growing in the Nashville area, I think that eventually they will have some sort of shop in Nashville by 2023 or 2024, but it probably more than likely will not happen down the road. So we'll wait and see what happens long term, but it doesn't look like we're going to be seeing a regular shop in Nashville going forward. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Scott Melton. Now, Scott Melton was involved in a very, very bad crash late in the ARCA race with around 25 or 26 laps ago. I really did not watch the ARCA race, but I did see that there was a wreck that would cause, I believe, by Richard Garber getting back a Tony Breidinger. And Scott Melton basically got collided involved. He got a ton of damage on that and crashed really, really hard. It took them a long time to get him out of the car, but they eventually got him out of the car. But unfortunately, he was basically taken out on a stretcher. And basically, he was sent to the hospital where he's evaluated. He was awake and alert, but he basically suffered a compound fracture to his left leg, meaning that he is going to basically have to go. He went, I believe, into surgery. It's unclear if the surgery was successful or not. There are really no reports that have come out recently. If there are reports that come out that he went successful, report that here later on the channel later this week. But it's definitely sad to see what happens. And I feel like the ARC, I love super speed racing, don't get me wrong, but I feel like there needs to be updates when it comes to the safety of these ARCA cars. The ARCA series has had a lot of really bad and scary accidents, and I feel like one thing that really could fix this issue when it comes to these scary accidents is updating the safety of these cars. It needs to happen because it's getting ridiculous how unsafe these cars can technically be. I really hope it does happen, though. They can find a way to make these cars a lot safer because I think it's going to be better for the fans, and honestly, I hope that they can find a way to make these ARCA cars safer going forward. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Max Gutierrez. As Matt Gutierrez is going to be making his Truck Series debut at Charlotte. It was announced on the ARCA broadcast on Saturday afternoon that he would be making his Truck Series debut at Charlotte Motor Speedway. It's unclear what team he's going to be driving for, but Joseph Sergey reported this later on, I believe on Sunday or late afternoon on Saturday. He reported that he's expected to potentially drive the 37 for AM Racing at Charlotte. He's also supposed to drive, I believe, 3 other races later this year as well. Now, Max Gutierrez has been competing for ARCA in a very, very long time, and I think this is such a really cool opportunity for Max Gutierrez. Considering the fact, like I said, that Max Gutierrez has been competing for ARCA for many, many years. It's been kind of unknown when he was going to make that jump. It's unclear. He's had some decent stats in ARCA, but not amazing stats, but he hasn't really been in the best opportunities. And this isn't the best car in the field, don't get me wrong, but I think having an opportunity to compete in the Truck Series and competing in a top-tier series, you absolutely want to take that chance and that opportunity. So I'm very happy to see that Max is getting the opportunity. Only thing for Max is just he needs to be out there, don't cause any issues, and just get that experience and do the best you can in this series. That's one thing I'm really looking forward to see if he could jump in there and do really, really well. But congratulations to Max Gutierrez on the opportunity, and good to see that he is good, and hopefully we'll see him do really well here in the future. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Trackhouse Racing. Now, Justin Marks said in the post-race media bulletin after they won, he says that Trackhouse Racing doesn't have any races for sponsorship this season and not many races to fill for 2023. This is huge for Trackhouse Racing for a couple of reasons. One, companies are really wanting to sponsor Trackhouse Racing. This week, it was announced that Jockey was going to be sponsoring Trackhouse Racing for multiple years, and also was announced that just yesterday, the Worldwide Express was going to be jumping up the plate to sponsor Trackhouse Racing. And now there looks like they're getting close to it. And there's a lot. Other big reason is, one, they have money coming into the team, so you can keep both those drivers and develop around their drivers. Another big thing that absolutely is going to happen right here with this development is what is going to happen is going to be able to focus on the cars. And I think with the sponsorship, it's only going to make Trackhouse stronger. And you look how strong Trackhouse has been this year with already 2 victories this season with Ross Chastain, and Suarez kind of knocking on the door of getting that first career Cup Series victory. He's one of 2 guys that I think that will still end up getting their first wins along with Tyler Reddick. But I think Trackhouse Racing is showing this year that they are such a capable team to continue improving. And again, very happy to see that they're getting good on sponsorship. This is such a good thing. And like I said, very happy to see that Trackhouse Racing is good, getting close to being good on sponsorship going forward. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Clint Bowyer. As Clint Bowyer and Chris Myers basically reported this, with Dale Jr. being the broadcast booth for Fox, Clint Bowyer is going to be in the NBC Sports booth at some point this season. Now, it is right now unclear what track he is going to run at here in, not track he's going to run, but what race he'll be broadcasting. Well, I think the race, there's going to be a couple other options. First one is National Super Speedway. The first race at NBC does have the broadcasting rights. I think that could be a good option for him. And it'd be cool to have Jeff Byrne and Clint Bowyer, who were teammates at one point in Rich Chills Racing. It'd be cool if they both were together. Another track, and I think this might actually end up being the most likely, I think it's going to be Kansas. And I'll tell you why I think it's going to be Kansas. Kansas is Clint Bowyer's home track. And I think it would be a really awesome and a really great track for Clint Bowyer to do broadcasting. Now, I'll be for real and honest. I'm not a big fan of Clint Bowyer's broadcasting at points. Yes, I do think Clint Bowyer does have some insightful stuff from time to time, but there's also a lot of times where I watch Clint Bowyer and I just cringe a little bit at how Clint Bowyer acts. He's trying to be that funny comedian, and sometimes his jokes don't come off very, very well. So I'm glad, though, they're doing this, and I love that they're trying to have crossover with the broadcasting rights. I just hope that one time we get Dale Jr. commentate every single race, because Dale Jr. was absolutely on point. I really talked about this yesterday in the race review, but I thought the broadcaster Fox was really good yesterday, and Dale Jr. is just a unicorn where he's perfect for both broadcast rights. So NASCAR, please let Dale Jr. do both broadcasts on NASCAR. Just NASCAR, hire him for your networks and get him on both of them. I hope that does happen, but it is cool, though, that in all seriousness, they're giving an opportunity to him to have an opportunity to do that. That's pretty cool, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Joey Logano. Now, Joey Logano was interviewed after crashing in the middle portion of the race at Talladega, and he was not very, very happy after the Talladega race. He was reported by multiple reports, including Noah Lewis, and the headline read that he is not a big fan of super speedways and says super speedway racing has sucked. Now, this is coming from a guy that's absolutely crashed in a ton of super speed races and has won a lot of super speed races and has caused a lot of wrecks. But I do think that Joey Logano over the last couple years, especially with him flipping in 2021, and with him starting to get a lot older as a race car driver, I don't think that aggression has been there as much. There definitely has been aggression with Joey Logano in these super speed races recently, do not get me wrong. But I do think that aggression is not as big as it used to be for Joey Logano, and I think that's why he's becoming more and more frustrated about it. He is getting up there in age. He is 32 years old. He's not getting up there in age, but he's getting into that portion of his career where he doesn't really want to get injured and cause a lot more wrecks going forward. I think we're starting to see maybe a new Joey Logano where he's not as crazy, but it seems like anytime he gets involved in a wreck, it seems like he has some really negative comments about super speed racing, which, let's be for real, I think the drivers hate super speed racing. The fans enjoy it like myself, but I understand the driver's frustration when it comes to super speedway racing. So I get his frustration, don't get me wrong, but it's just crazy to think that a guy who's caused a lot of wrecks super speedways, once again, is not happy about super speedway racing. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Max Verstappen. Yesterday, the F1 series completed at Imola Speedway. There was rain at the beginning of the race. There was a couple wrecks that happened, but it would be dominated by Max Verstappen, who would pick up the win in the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix at Imola. This, I believe, is his 22nd career Formula 1 victory, which he's now, I believe, surpassed Kimi Räikkönen on the all-time stats. Keep this in mind, Max Verstappen is only 24 years old, and he's already scored 22 victories and a championship up to this point. I think we're kind of getting to that point now where you can question, will he catch Lewis Hamilton on not only on championships, will he catch Lewis Hamilton on victories? That's going to be determined because we're going to be in this era of this car for a very, very long time, and Red Bull has really hit it We know that he hasn't really had the greatest finishes this year. He's had 2 DNFs, but the other 2 races, he's gone to victory lane. If they can keep up that consistency, I think Max Verstappen can compete against Charles Leclerc for a victory. But speaking of Charles Leclerc, he unfortunately did end up spinning out late in the race. He was basically embarrassed by that, but he did rebound to 6th place finish. So he was able to rebound and recover and gain some of those points back that he lost after the spin and coming down pit road. So it's definitely unfortunate for sure for Charles Leclerc, but Max Verstappen won the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix in dominating fashion. Not as much of an interesting race than the NASCAR Cup Series race, but it's kind of crazy to think that happened in the race where he ended up wrecking. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tyler Reddick. Now, Tyler Reddick was being interviewed by the media, including Bob Pockers, on Saturday, and he says he understands the crew being frustrated, but he also said that he did not want to fight after the last lap incident between him and Chase Briscoe. For those of you who did not watch the NASCAR Cup Series race at Bristol Dirt last week, Tyler Reddick and Chase Briscoe were battling for the win, and Chase Briscoe threw a really, really aggressive slide job, basically ended up getting into Tyler Reddick, and they both ended up spinning out. Tyler Reddick did a 360. It looked like he was still going to pick up his first victory, and then Kyle Busch stormed up to the outside and picked up his 60th career NASCAR Cup Series victory. We're going to get into Kyle Busch, though, in just a little bit in this episode. Tyler Reddick, though, I definitely understand he's kind of that cool driver, but he also has said that he would do the same thing, which he would also get criticism if he did that to Chase Briscoe. He would be a lot of people would give criticism to him. He probably is going to be thinking about it more, but he did say, I also believe, if I remember correctly, he did say that he's going to race Chase Briscoe aggressively as well, and he's going to race drivers very, very aggressive. And I think we're starting to see shades of Tyler Reddick as well, being similar to Kyle Larson's style career, if this makes any sense. Tyler Reddick has basically been very close to winning these races this year, and really last year as well. But it seems like he cannot close out the deal. And if he continues to have bad finishes, he's going to fall the playoffs right now. You look at the playoff grid, he's right now 16th in the points, only 10 points above the cutoff line. So he needs to try to get a win here sooner or later. And I think in long term, he is going to get frustrated if things do not start going his way. I do hope things really do start turning around for Tyler Reddick. And I think a win is coming for Tyler Reddick this year. I still think it's coming. But man, you think about Tyler Reddick and especially how much hype he's had this year. And we've praised him. He's below Austin Dillon the points by 4 or 5 points or not. And I think at some point that frustration is going to boil over. But I completely understand and respect him not being upset at Chase Briscoe. They're a classy move right there. But again, I think a lot of people wanted him to be really upset about it. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson once again, but unfortunately not in the best way. So, on the last lap of the NASCAR Cup Series race at Talladega, coming down off turn number 4, Kyle Larson was going to try to make a move to the outside to Erik Jones. Kyle Larson unfortunately went up high and unfortunately ended up wrecking not only Kurt Busch, but ended up wrecking Bubba Wallace in the instance. Now, Kurt Busch was not very happy after this wreck, and Bubba Wallace, we really don't know. He did say that he can't take, he doesn't know how many more hits he can take when it comes to super speed races, and it's very understandable considering the last Super Speedway race at Atlanta and some of the other wrecks he's had this year. He really has had a lot of wrecks so far in 2022, so he doesn't want to continue having wrecks. Now, going back to the incident stuff, it is clear that this is Kyle Larson's fault. And this is not the first time that Kyle Larson has made a mistake this year. Go back to a couple where he fortunately got into his teammate Chase Elliott, and you also go back to the LA Clash where he wrecked Justin Haley, and also has had other issues in Daytona 500. But I'm going to kind of give a little bit of defense to Kyle Larson here. And there's a couple reasons why I'm giving defense. Number one, Kyle Larson did not do that on purpose. I saw a lot of people on social media that were literally really angry at Kyle Larson for getting into the 2311 cars. And don't get me wrong, you have a right to be upset if you're a fan of this, but I saw some really just questionable posts on social media that I really did not understand in many, many ways. And here's the thing, there's a couple things you have to understand. Kyle Larson's definitely at fault, but Kyle Larson probably, if he had a lot more experience being up front at the end of these super speed races, he would be definitely not making these mistakes and causing these issues. You have to remember that Kyle Larson has never been this close to winning a super speed race in the near 10 years of his career in the Cup Series. Yes, he's won Xfinity Series races, super speeds, go back to 2018, but Kyle Larson generally has not contended at super speed races for the victory, so it is his inexperience, and he said he felt like he ran a perfect race until the end. It's like, I made that mistake near the end. It kind of cost me an opportunity to win, and he still came off with a top 5 finish. I do understand the frustration for the 2311 racing fans, but I've seen some people basically saying that Kyle Larson basically needs his blinders and needs glasses or something like that. I've seen some very questionable social media posts around Kyle Larson. And don't get me wrong, Kyle Larson is definitely at fault for the wreck. There's no doubt about that. But at the same token, and at the same time, I do feel like some of the comments I've seen have been a little bit unjustified in my honest opinion. So it's definitely crazy for sure. But at the same token, I understand people's frustration at Kyle Larson. I'd be mad too if my guy got wrecked. But at the same token, he didn't do it on purpose. And there's been a little bit overreaction to the situation with Kyle Larson. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Ross Chastain. As it was reported during the media bullpen after, like I said, they've won, was said multiple times in this video, that Ross Chastain's car that he won is the same car that they use at Coda. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The car they use at Coda is the same car they used this weekend at Talladega. I completely forgot, by the way, that when it was reported back there, when I believe it's Kelly Crandall or Alex Andreev who was at the trackhouse shop, they said they were using that car at Talladega. I completely forgot about that they had used the car, and that's probably why they ended up winning this race. And that's one thing also about this next-gen car as well, is this next-gen car is able to go to different types of tracks. For instance, you can use a super speed car on a road course track or use a road course car on a short track. This next-gen car is so viable and so diverse when it comes to a track that you can run. Now, dirt rate track is much different. You have to definitely run a different type of car for that. But you basically can run the same car pretty much everywhere, and that's what this next-gen car is supposed to do, and that's why it's going to long-term be a cost saver for these teams, is because it's viable to go to any type of track. You can go to any type of track and basically run this car. And that's one thing I really absolutely love about this next-gen car, is that it can go to different types of tracks and different forms of racing, and it can go out there and do really, really good things. So that was so cool to see that we got to see that car go to victory lane. And it's kind of crazy to think that the car that won the race is able to also win at Circuit America. So if we see that car later this year, you know who I'm going to be basically picking to win, especially if we get more reports that this car does run later this year. So it's such a crazy story, though, the fact that they basically used that car to go ahead and race there. So definitely a crazy story for sure. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chase Elliott versus Cody Ware. Now, Chase Elliott was asked by the media on Saturday about his situation with Cody Ware. Chase Elliott basically decided to come back with a response to the media, and he basically says that there is no drama between him and Cody Ware, and basically said that you guys in the media will really continue to bring up a little bit of this drama. Now, we're going to talk for a second, though, about the Chase Elliott and Cody Ware situation. I never really got into this point here this week, but near the middle portion of the race, I think in stage 3, if I'm not mistaken, Chase Elliott and Cody Ware had some contact going into turn number 3, where Chase Elliott ran straight into the back of Cody Ware, and Cody Ware ended up spinning. Cody Ware, under caution, was not very happy. He got into the outside of Chase Elliott, and there was a lot of contact down in the caution period. Now, in my opinion, I understand Cody Ware being frustrated, but it's really not the smartest thing to do to really run and almost wreck somebody under caution. And we've seen a lot of drivers do end up getting penalties for basically running into cars under caution. We've seen them throughout the years that be a thing. Now, the thing that's really important to note here is Chase Elliott is probably not even worried about Cody Ware. I think that's why he kind of went snarky a little bit with the media, is because Chase Elliott is probably not even worried about Cody Ware. Cody Ware, basically, besides a couple times this year, has really ran outside the top 30, and that's nothing against Cody Ware. I think Cody Ware does have a little bit of talent, but again, Cody Ware is a guy that generally runs in the back, and I think a lot of that is with the equipment with Rick Ware Racing. Meanwhile, Chase Elliott usually is up front, and that's why he's still a points leader by 21 points over Ryan Blaney. Yes, he only has one top 5 this year, but he's been extremely consistent up front. Unlike Cody Ware, who's outside the top 30 in points right now and has been running consistently outside the top 25 and outside the top 30 this year, which we were promised at Rick Ware Racing was going to be a better team in the Cup Series. They're good in the IndyCar Series and also the IMSA Series and the other forms they run, but they seem to be struggling here in NASCAR Cup Series, which is a major, major shock. We thought we were going to see them more consistently in the top 15 and top 20 throughout the season. But I think it's kind of crazy to think that we basically had one of the most interesting rivalries in a long time, at least for a little bit, between Chase Elliott and Cody Ware. I do not expect more issues between these two going forward happening. I could entirely end up being wrong. We see more issues between the two, but I do think going forward, we're not going to see any issues between Chase Elliott and Cody Ware. And if it does, I'm absolutely going to be shocked and absolutely surprised that more issues come out between these two. I don't think anything's going to happen between the two, but we'll have to wait and see what happens if there are more issues that do come between Chase Elliott and Cody Ware in the future. But again, I'm not expecting any more issues between those two going forward. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Noah Gragson. Now, Noah Gragson, after picking up his second victory of the 2022 season in Xfinity and also seventh career NASCAR Xfinity Series victory, Noah Gragson was interviewed about the media about what his plans are for 2023. And he says that he doesn't have any plans yet for 2023, but admits he would love to get an opportunity to race full-time in the Cup Series. Says right now his only plans after Phoenix in November is maybe run the Snowball Derby. Now, Noah Gragson has been in the NASCAR Xfinity Series now since 2019. This is his fourth season in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, but this is the first season, really so far, where Noah Gragson has definitely looked like a championship contender. In fact, one of the 2 or 3 best drivers so far this year. And I think that experience is really playing into the role, into why he is performing super well currently at the moment. Now, there has been a lot of talk and conversation about potential teams jumping up to the Cup Series, and that is being around Junior Motorsports. Junior Motorsports has a rumor, there's been talk I think it was reported about a week or two ago, that they actually have been in talks and conversations of still trying to get a charter. However, charters are expected to be skyrocketing through the roof, even though a lot of the big teams that have wanted charters have gotten charters. Basically, right now, I think it's $15 million. The next charter is going to be $15 million. So it's going to cost a lot more to pick up a charter. And I think Dale Jr. has the cash and the money to make that jump, but is Dale Jr. going to be willing to spend $15 million on a charter? Because again, the thing that's holding up Junior Motorsports making that jump up in the Cup Series right now is getting a charter. Now, if that doesn't happen, if Noah Gragson wants to jump up the Cup next year and can't go there, what team do I think Noah Gragson goes to? I really think there's only really one option right now for him to make the move. He wants to go full-time, and that is Kaulig Racing. Now, a lot of you are thinking, why not Junior Motorsports and why not Hendrick Motorsports? Well, Hendrick Motorsports right now is not a viable option for Noah Gragson because Hendrick Motorsports, all 4 of their drivers are currently safe at Hendrick Motorsports. Alex Lohman and Kyle Larson's contracts right now go through 2023. They potentially both get extended. And Chase Elliott has a contract, I believe, through 2027 now. And William Byron while he's not been extended, he's expected to have a pretty long contract extension coming sooner than later. And I think Hendrick's core is going to be around for a very, very long time. I think Kaulig Racing is because, one, that is a team that is up and coming right now, and a team that's shown a lot of promise. The second reason is I think they're going to expand to a 3-car team next year, and I think that if Noah Gragson is able to make that jump up there, I think he'd be a good viable option. He has competed a couple Cup Series races this year. He did finish in the top 20 with Beard Motorsports this past weekend and has ran a couple races for them. I think he's going to run a lot more races as we get far down the road. I think he's supposed to be running maybe this week, if I'm not mistaken. I'm entirely not sure on that unless it's AJ is in the car. I don't remember who's in the car this week for the 16 team, but I think that Noah Gragson absolutely would be a great option, and I think that Cup Series experience that he's had and the longer he's been in there has been really helping his character. And another reason I think a lot of people want to see him up in the Cup Series next year is because he's got an incredible personality. He has, by far, in my opinion, when it comes to Victory Lane, he has the best Victory Lane celebrations and always the best when he wins races. He always has the best celebrations and is always fun to look at. So I hope he makes that jump next year. I don't know if it's going to happen, but he is getting up there in age too. He's, I believe, 24, 25. So that is losing a little bit of that opportunity to make that jump. But I really do believe that Noah Gragson is going to make that jump next year if it happens. If Junior Motorsports jumps up or another team jumps up, so be it. I believe that we are going to see the jump from Noah Gragson to the Cup Series next year, whether it's with Junior Motorsports or Kaulig. I think he will jump up to the Cup Series in as early as 2023. And now we're going to jump on to the first of 2 major stories of today's episode as we're talking about Bill Elliott. As it was announced on Friday afternoon that Bill Elliott is going to be making his grand return to the SRX in 2022 for 2 races this season. He will compete at Five Flags Speedway, and then he will compete at Stafford Speedway. Now, Bill Elliott, of course, in 1988 NASCAR Cup Series champion, also winner of around 44, 45 Cup Series races, and a driver who's been winning, and probably the longest, most winning popular driver in NASCAR history, and NASCAR Hall of Famer as well. Last year, Bill Elliott competed in the SRX, and besides the National Fairgrounds, which they basically gave him Tony Stewart's car, Bill Elliott really struggled in the SRX, but there was a lot of mechanical problems and a lot of mechanical problems that plagued Bill Elliott throughout the time he was in the SRX last year, and I think that's why he is not running the full season this year. But having a champion like Bill Elliott, who's still a legend to this day, and is still racing in other forms of racing, well, I'm not sure if he's running all forms of racing, but coming back to the SRX, I think is absolutely huge. Now, he'll be returning to the SRX here. There's a lot of other big names that are coming back to the SRX. Of course, Bobby Labonte's coming back full-time. Tony Stewart's coming back full-time. Michael Waltrip is going to be full-time again. Ryan Newman's joining on a full-time basis. We're going to see Matt Kenseth once again at points this year. Matt Kenseth for the first time. Haley Deegan's coming back this year. And you got a lot of IndyCar drivers that are coming over as well. You've got Joseph Newgarden's running a couple races. Ryan Hunter-Reay, who's full-time. Julio Castroneva's running a couple races, I think, this year. Tony Kanan's running a few races this year. And then, of course, you have some legends like Bubba Pollard's going to be in for a few races this year. Of course, Matthew Herschen, who we've talked about earlier in this episode, and some other people that are coming into the series as well. And I think that's one thing that's so fun to see that's with the SRX is you're getting all these cool names that are coming in who are either legends or really legendary in their field of racing who are coming into racing. That's one thing about the Superstar Racing experience, and I think it's going to be so cool to see Bill Elliott back in the series as they expand to a second season. I think Bill, if they don't give him cars that are not mechanically able to do things, I think Bill Elliott can, all serious and all honesty, be a pretty big contender here in that car. So I really hope and pray that Bill Elliott can do very well in the SRX. If he gets good cars, I think he'll be contending. Now, my question is what other drivers are they going to be looking at to get into the SRX? Are they looking at a guy like Kyle Larson, perhaps? I know there maybe has been discussions maybe around him. Are they looking at getting Chase Elliott to come back and run a few races? Chase Elliott, of course, won the final race for the SRX at the National Fairgrounds last year. Are they going to try to bring him back? That's another question right there. Are they going to bring a guy like Kenny Schrader in? I know there's been maybe, because Kenny Schrader's been helping out with the SRX a lot, why not bring him to run maybe at I-55 Speedway? I think it'd be really, really cool and really, really neat if they got some other cool drivers to race in the SRX. So, really exciting for sure. Again, I'm very happy to see that Bill Elliott is coming back and racing the SRX. Having Austin Bill from Dawsonville come back is very, very awesome, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we are talking about Kyle Busch. Now, Kyle Busch was speaking to the media, and we all thought really that Kyle Busch was safe for 2023, and we thought he was going to be entirely safe to return to Joe Gibbs Racing, right? Well, no, not necessarily. Kyle Busch was speaking to the media, and he did not seem very certain about his future at the time with Joe Gibbs Racing. He basically did say, and was basically getting squawk and seemed a little cryptic, and he says that he would like his future settled yesterday. He also says that he's not getting antsy about it, and he says if it happens, it happens. If it's a goodbye, then he says goodbye, and then basically was asked basically asked Joe Gibbs in regards to that. Now, Joe Gibbs then got spoken later to by Bob Pockrass later that afternoon, and he says that he feels confident it will get done for Kyle Busch. Then David Wilson said yesterday, speaking to Dustin Long, he says that he is a little disappointed in Kyle Busch's comments, says that they will have a seat for him. And very recently, in an interview with Bob Pockrass that came out very recently, they do say that they're getting into the final conversations. They've had talks for the last weeks in regards to sponsor and potentially who could work with Kyle Busch. Now, this wouldn't even really be a question right now about Kyle Busch's future if Kyle Busch had a set sponsor. The reason that Kyle Busch's future right now is a little bit uncertain is because the fact he does not have a sponsor currently at the moment for 2023, as M&M's, after being in NASCAR for nearly 30 years, or over 30 years now, they are no longer going to be in NASCAR after the season. So they're still searching for a sponsor for a majority of the season. Now, I still think Interstate Batteries is going to potentially sponsor Kyle Busch next year if he does return to this ride. But what other sponsor, if he's going to return, is going to happen? Now, I still am pretty confident that Kyle Busch is going to come back to Joe Gibbs Racing in 2023. And I'll tell you why. I think Kyle Busch will be able to find a sponsor for himself to drive in 2023. And I think the sponsor that's actually going to sponsor him for a majority of the season is actually going to be Menards. And I'll tell you why I think it's going to be Menards. A couple of reasons. One, Menards has sponsored multiple drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series in the past. They have sponsored, of course, Brandon Jones in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and they do sponsor multiple organizations in different forms as well. But like I said as well, they sponsor Brandon Jones. Another reason that I think that he is going to get picked up by Menards is because of the fact that we have seen Kyle Busch in some Menards commercials. Yes, M&M's has been associated with them. We've been seeing Kyle Busch in Menards commercials very, very recently. And I've seen it a couple times where he's been involved in that. So I think that's another reason why I think he's going to end up working with Menards if he does return next year. But if Kyle Busch does not return to Joe Gibbs Racing next year and does not find a way to get a sponsor working with him, This will be the biggest free agency moment we've had probably since Dale Jr. in 2007. And the big reason is, one, Kyle Busch is one of 9 drivers in NASCAR Cup Series history who have 60 career victories, and he just picked up victory a couple weeks ago, and he is a 2-time NASCAR Cup Series champion and has been the most successful driver in Joe Gibbs racing history. And it's also big as well because this is also development of Kyle Busch Motorsports. Kyle Busch Motorsports is associated with Toyota, and if he doesn't return to Joe Gibbs Racing, goes to like Ford or Chevy perhaps, then that's going to be an issue right there for Kyle Busch. But like I said, I still do believe that Kyle Busch is going to get re-signed. But if he doesn't re-sign with Joe Gibbs Racing, what teams do I think he goes to? There's a lot of other teams that could be open up. Richard Childress Racing perhaps could be an opportunity for him. I saw someone throwing out maybe a possibility that maybe Austin Dillon retires and Kyle Busch gets into the 3-car. I don't see that happen. That's probably not very viable. I think Austin, being the grandson of Richard Childress, he's probably not going anywhere. And Tyler Reddick, he's got a contract through 2023, so there's no option right there. Maybe 2311 Racing, perhaps. I know that's one I think is very, very likely if he doesn't return to Joe Gibbs Racing. 2311 Racing does have his brother Kurt Busch, and you know there's been conversation that 2311 Racing does want to expand once again in 2023, and I know they're probably going to keep Bubba Wallace, and we know Kurt Busch is safe through 2023 for sure. Probably next year will be last year for Kurt Busch, but Kyle Busch does say that, we'll see what happens there. You do also have other teams like Stewart-Haas Racing. The 10 car is still available, but I really believe that the 10 car is going to go to Ryan Preece. Another viable option for Kyle Busch if he doesn't return to Joe Gibbs Racing is he could just jump down to the Truck Series and win a championship down there, which I think he is still going to do that. I know some people think we're crazy for saying that he's going to make that jump down to the Truck Series, but I really believe that Kyle Busch is going to at some point do that. Whether that is in 2023 or 2024, 2025, Kyle Busch is probably going to make that jump down at some point and try to become the first driver to win all 3 respective championships. But long term, I still do believe that Kyle Busch is going to get extended with Joe Gibbs Racing. They're going to find a sponsor for him. I think there's a lot of uncertainty because he doesn't have a sponsor. And if we still had M&M sponsoring next year, this wouldn't even be a conversation right now. But you also got to start thinking about Kyle Busch long term. How much longer is he going to compete in the Cup Series? He has been competing in the Cup Series now for 17 seasons. This is 18 full-time year in the Cup Series, and Kyle Busch is getting up there in age. He's going to be 37 here really, really soon. Now, I think he still has 5 to 8 years left in his career where he can be very, very competitive. We've seen Kevin Hart be competitive in his mid-50s, and not 50s, mid-40s. What am I talking about? But in his mid-40s, he's been really, really competitive. But how much longer is Kyle Busch going to want to compete in the Cup Series is a very big question. That's one thing we're going to be watching long term, and we'll wait to see what happens in regards to that. But it does look like Kyle Busch's future may be a little bit uncertain, but we'll have to wait and see what happens going forward, to be honest with you. So, anyway, that's today's long NASCAR and motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, Turkey Sean notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on page as well. Let's schedule below for that and comment your thoughts on today's video. Do you think Kyle Busch is going to return to Joe Gibbs Racing in 2023 or not? And so, if he does return, what sponsor works him? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Bill Elliott returning to the SRX? And who else do you think should join the SRX? Let me know in the comments below. Most likely on my channel tomorrow, we're going to have race picks for Dover for the 11th race of the season. If not, we'll see what comes out tomorrow on my channel, but expect picks out on my channel tomorrow. And I think I'm going to finally get a video out for the new channel here either tomorrow or in the week or so. I've got some things I'm working on, so hopefully that will be coming out for the new channel soon. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.